land to build a 100,000 square foot building. And as normal with our development agreements, we consider two things: building value and job creation. Throughout the process of their building, it took a little bit of a turn in which it was a longer process to build the building than they anticipated. And they put down their 20 new hires to be completed in the year 2020. Due to COVID-19 and economic conditions, they have not been able to do that. They've been able to maintain, but they have not been able to hire new employees. In September of this year, they requested that the city consider an amendment to their agreement in regards to just job creation only. So with that, we would like to come forward. Nick has put together an amendment to the development agreement, and I've spoke with Kathy Longton at Federal Foam. Basically, we've given them an additional 3 years if that's approved by the city council this evening. We felt that was fair. Going into 2021, it's very iffy as far as COVID goes. We wanted to make sure we gave them a time period that was applicable for them to be able to hire 20 new full-time employees. So with that, I can answer any additional questions, or regarding the amendment, Nick can answer questions.
Beth, this is Mike. So it really isn't, I guess you use the term hiring 20 additional employees. It's really growing their employment count by 20 is a better way to say that, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Baseline of a number of employees when this transaction happened, and they need to increase it by 20 to realize the full benefit of the incentive that the city put forth.
That is correct, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve this amendment to the development agreement with Federal Foam.
All right. There's a motion and a second to approve the amended agreement with Federal Foam. I'll second that. Discussion. Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
Alderman Weiner.
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
All right, 7.2 is the
This conference will now be recorded.
7.2 is the Community Commons Development Agreement extension.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Richmond and the School District of Richmond have a development agreement in place regarding the old middle school site, also formerly known as the Community Commons site. The property was conveyed from the school district to the city in October of 2017. One of the conditions of the development agreement was that the city would commence development of that site within 24 months, after which time they could ask for a 12-month extension. So that original 24-month period passed in the fall of 2019. At that time, the city requested a 1-year extension from the school board, and that 1-year extension was granted. It's now October 2020, so it's been another 12-month period, and so we do have to request an additional 12-month extension from the school board at their upcoming meeting here in October. In addition to that, in your packet, I've included some other discussion questions and noted some changes since 2017 that really warrant some conversation about the project with input and feedback from the school board, with the city council, and with the library board. So in addition to just asking for that 12-month extension, request that the school board participate in a joint conversation this fall regarding the master plan for that site and the library project as a whole, in collaboration with the city and with the library board. So this was discussed at the library board meeting last week. We wanted to bring it to the council here this evening, and formal motion would be warranted, and then we would work with the city attorney to send that language to to Patrick Olson at the school board this week, so that they have time to include it in their agenda packet for their upcoming meeting.
You know what time that meeting is, Manoa? On October 19th?
I don't remember the start time, if it's at 5 or 6.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not 100% certain that having the city attorney draft another extension. I understand that the current one agreement is expiring. But to me, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done. It would be really easy just to ask the district to extend this agreement for another year. But short of some definitive plan on what we could do different than what we thought we were going to do 2 years ago, seems to me we're actually kind of fooling ourselves that somehow if they just give us another 12 months, something magically is going to happen to make things be different. I'm supportive of getting an extension, but in conjunction with that there be a discussion, whether it's the full school board, the full council, the library board, or some representation of each of those bodies to really put their heads together and talk about what it's very possibly going to take to see this project to fruition. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approach the school with a request for an extension for another 12 months, but in conjunction with that there would be that it's really required that there would be a joint communication conversation between either members of or full bodies, I guess whatever is expeditious, to actually sit down and start formulating some ideas just to know what can be different going forward. Because I do think there are folks in the community desperately want to see the library happen, thinking that is still potential based on the way it was talked about a couple of years ago. And I'm just talking about in terms of funding mechanism.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting, Noah, you've put in your memo here, what did the district's input on what they learned. I'm trying to look at the word of how you, relative to the situation with their
Yeah, what
athletic
lessons,
field.
what lessons could be learned and applied from the
the
fundraising
stadium
efforts
project.
with the stadium?
And I know there are some people would say this is a library. It's not an athletic complex, but in many ways, I don't think they're very different in terms of public fundraising. So I do think it's time that we kind of talk about that 800-pound gorilla that's in the room and come up with a real plan. Because just to extend it for the sake of extending it, to me it's just not productive. So do you need me to re-say that?
No, so I'll summarize it in, so that way you can validate what I've heard or how I'm interpreting it. So your motion is to approve the extension of the agreement, but also to engage in a conversation with the school, library, whether it's individual members or the full bodies of all, to have really that heart-to-heart conversation of realistically, what can we do to have a library in our community? That's correct. All right. So with that understanding, we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. So we're getting into discussion. I think, Mike, you're dead on. We have to have that heart-to-heart talk. What is the community going to support? What does the different bodies want? What are the other options that are out there? And have that community discussion. Anyone else? All right, so are we ready to vote, Michelle? Call the roll?
I'm ready. Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 7.3, resolution 102001, authorizing the issuance and sale of up to $3,476,000 and 230,000, $3,476,230 water and sewer utility revenue bonds, Series 2020, and providing for other details and covenants with respect thereto.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet tonight, we do have the resolution, as Mayor Fred read, in regards to the funding for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades that was approved earlier this year. The funding source that will be utilized for this project is underneath the DNR's Clean Water Fund program. This is a financial assistance programs available to municipalities, and they provide a lower interest rate or subsidize the loan through a lower interest rate. So this particular issuance would bear a rate of interest of 1.65% and would be repaid over 20 years. And again, facilitates a wide variety of activity that's occurring at the wastewater treatment plant currently. That project is estimated to complete in June of 2021. Upon authorization or adoption of the resolution tonight, this will allow staff to work with MSA as well as Corals and Brady and the DNR to close on the bonding on October 20th. The water and sewer revenues are utilized to essentially provide the debt covenant coverage on it, but the payment revenue comes from the sewer revenues through user fees.
Does this complete, at least what's on the table right now, the upgrades, the needed upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes, it does. From the ability, there are several components. So the grit removal system is being upgraded. There's a positive displacement blower that is being replaced. The control building is being expanded, as well as ultraviolet disinfection modifications. There's sludge thickener and equipment replacement, storage tanks reconfiguration. Really, these upgrades are being made so that we can continue to adhere to the requirements that the DNR has for standards, as well as capacity for the next 20 years at the wastewater.
It seems to me, I remember earlier in this year, we were talking about, there was a fee we were paying almost kind of in lieu of something that the DNR, there was a project where you were responsible for what's going on downstream, upstream, and so we paid a fee in lieu of the technology to do something kind of different. This doesn't address that. This is just physical upgrades to the plant. And I would strongly encourage everyone, if you have not taken a tour of the wastewater treatment plant, you should. And I would say probably don't do it right before you're ready to eat or when you've just after you've eaten. But the technology is really incredible. And to understand, if you take the tour, you will understand certain phrases better about stuff that flows downhill. It just helps with your understanding. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we approve resolution, and I got to find the name of it here.
102001.
Exactly, 102001.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve resolution 102001, the $3,476,230 issuance of bonds. Is there any discussion?
Dan, I have a question. I understand, I think, that the 1.65% interest is the interest that the city's going to pay on the principal of the bond issue. But then buyers have to be enticed to buy these bonds. So what interest rate are the bonds going to bear to the purchasing public?
I don't have that information in front of me right now, Kirk.
But it's the difference between the subsidy and the 1.65.
What is the subsidy amount? The difference?
Well, yeah, because that'll tell us the interest rate. on
Right.
the bond.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Interestingly
I
enough,
can grab that.
you're assuming that the what I'll call the retail rate is actually higher than that. We don't really know that it is, but I'm willing to guess if it is, it's not much higher
No.
based on where borrowing rates are.
Not in the
Well, that's what I
current
was wondering
environment.
is what do you have to do to entice people to buy them? Not much.
Yeah, and the DNR is responsible for that portion of it, so I need to contact them to know what that exact amount is.
Well, don't
but
worry about doing that. I was just curious.
That's an interesting question.
Does the 3.4 go against our borrowing?
Yes, it does. But this is a revenue bond, so it doesn't go
Yeah.
against the
Well,
GO.
move those
right.
graph bars up.
Okay.
Mayor, move those graph bars up.
This doesn't go against that graph bar.
All right, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Weidmeyer,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 7.4 is the Plan Commission recommendation, the certified survey map review of the Wings of New Richmond.
Mayor and council, this item went to the Plan Commission earlier this evening. This is for a certified survey map for Wings of New Richmond. The property is located near the Johnson Collision Building at the south end of town near Paperjack Drive and Heritage Drive. The CSM recommendation, the recommendation from the Plan Commission this evening was to approve the CSM with 6 conditions on there. The biggest takeaway that I wanted to just point to the council was that this also includes dedication of public right-of-way. If you've driven through that, you can tell that it kind of goes from city streets and suddenly the curb and gutter stops because you're actually not in public right-of-way there. This really cleans that up. That's been a long-term goal that the city has had to officially make that a public street all the way through. At this time, it's just the CSM. We have not received any plans for any development at this time. This time, it's really just cleaning this up and dedicating that to the city. So the recommendation from the Plan Commission would be to approve the CSM with the 6 conditions noted in the packet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is that proposed to be 3 different lots then?
Yeah, so currently the Johnson Collision Building itself is one parcel. The parking lot to the west of it is a separate parcel. Those 2 parcels are remaining as they are. They're looking to market that corner lot. This is really including the property between the parking lot and then going north up towards the gas station and the former gas station Burger King. There is one parcel in between that's owned by, I believe, Indian Head Insurance that is not involved in this,
Okay.
but it's really involving that area
But
owned
doesn't-
by the Ericksons.
It doesn't go all the way up to the gas station Burger King.
Correct, not all the way up. There's one parcel in between there yet.
This really represents the action of 2 different landowners
Correct.
because it's Wings and Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve the certified survey map as submitted with the 6 conditions that are outlined.
All right, so there's a motion to approve the CSM for Wings of New Richmond with 6 conditions. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
And we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 7.5 is the disposal of buildings at 2032 County Double C.
Mayor and council, this item went to the Airport Commission at their meeting last week. This was in regards to city-owned property near the school farm up by the airport. There's an old barn that is falling apart on the property. If anyone's driven by, roofs caving in. We had the building inspector take a look at it as well. And the Heritage Center approached us. They're building a U.S. Marshal office at the Heritage Center. And they have a contractor who's willing to take down the building for free. And then they would use some of the barn wood, if it's salvageable, for the U.S. Marshal building at the Heritage Center. So they approached the Airport Commission last week. The Airport Commission recommended authorizing the Heritage Center to dismantle the buildings at no cost to the city and to use the wood for their project. And that would be our recommendation for you this evening.
Anybody have any questions?
You say U.S. Marshal's office. Obviously, it's something that is in keeping with the rest of the property out there. Talking about an older structure.
Right, so they're looking kind of for that older exterior look to it. G.M. Peterson is helping, as well as Chuck Mells, and they're hoping to have kind of a little jail cell, some police memorabilia inside the building, and they've started the foundation and framing for that. they're hoping to make it still look like an older building, so it blends in with the, some of the buildings that are already on the property.
And do you have any idea what happens once the material comes down? You still have something out there on the land. What's the plan to finish cleaning that up?
So in terms of, shingles, material,
Yep.
that would still be at no cost to the city. So that would be at their disposal.
Well, I mean, I think it's great. I'm just curious, is this farmland going to be that we're talking about, this site that's at the, what is that, the northwest edge of the airport, basically?
Across the street.
Across the street, yep.
But so the lumber's not just to be taken down, the roof's gone, but I mean, you've got a foundation there. Is the land gonna be kind of, will it be done, or is it just the city's gonna clean that up when they're done? You know
So
what I'm saying?
they wouldn't be like breaking up the foundation of the building. You know, really they're taking down the frame and the structure itself.
So Mike is asking, what's the plan then for the foundation of the barn?
That's something that at some point, you know, the city may be responsible for down the road. Ultimately, if the building were to fall down in the near future, the city would also be liable to pay for the raising of that building. So
I don't have any issues with the idea. I'm just wondering about you're saying that the roof's gonna be dealt with. That won't be there. So really, when it's all said and done, we're gonna have concrete in the ground as far as the structure goes, and that's it.
yep, right. You
It
still
hasn't been
have
discussed on the airport commission.
Oh, it
the
says here,
farmhouse would still be there as well.
this
The
says
agreement with
was.
The Preservation Society to have it taken down,
Oh, you mean the rest of it?
the rest of it
Sure.
really hasn't been discussed. I
Yeah.
mean, we know there's gonna be something left over and Jamin is not probably going to be taking on that stuff out. It'll, and maybe end up being buried. We haven't really discussed it at that level yet. So we
Well,
were,
The only concern I have is relative to, that the city's protected in case somebody got hurt while they were working, taking the building apart. So I make a motion that we approve this, request by the Heritage Center to use that material and take it down at their expense. But with the understanding that appropriate liability insurance policy is proven so that city couldn't be liable for somebody being hurt while the building's being taken apart.
All right, and that's the motion to approve with, make sure you got some insurance. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
yes,
Alderman Kraft,
yes,
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Just for the council's edification, so the house is still being used for safety training, fire department, police, I presume are in there, but fire department is in there frequently doing searches and stuff. So that motion passes. Item 7.6, resolution 102002, accepting public improvements for Willow River Bluffs First Edition.
So item 7.6 and 7.7 are both very similar. The first one is for Willow River Bluffs. The developers completed both lifts of asphalt, curb and gutter, sidewalks, and we're all completed. So accepting the public improvements begins the 1-year warranty for those improvements. And the same thing for item 7.7, Naser Way. That's the Naser Heights development on East Richmond Way near 140th Street. Those improvements were also completed earlier this fall. So the recommendation from staff would be to approve both resolutions, 102002 and resolution 102003.
Do we want to do them separately? Or
I was just gonna say, feel free.
I'll make a motion. We approve, resolution 102001.
It's two and three,
We want to do them all at once?
So one has already been done.
Okay.
but 2 and 3,
So
we
two-
can do together.
1, 2, and 3.
One has already been passed.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. So there's a motion to approve resolutions 2 and 3. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second's been made. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft,
yes,
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
yes,
All right, and that motion passes. So item 7.8 is the council chamber AV technology upgrades.
Mayor and council, we just wanted to provide you with a brief update. The AV technology upgrades that were approved earlier this year and scheduled to actually take place the week that the Safer at Home order was instituted were delayed due to COVID. But now, as we continue to meet on a more regular basis, both in the council chambers and remotely, we are recommending to begin that installation in December of this year. There are several improvements with this upgrade that we feel that the quality and the capabilities for video conferencing will improve for all that are participating. So again, no action necessary this evening. Just want to provide an update that we will work with the contractor to install that in December after election.
Well, are we going to have some conversation about what exactly we're doing
It's the same.
relative to those up? Well, the reason I say that is because one thing we've certainly learned over the last 7 months is how important, not just sound, but people's ability to be online and watch what's going on. And I don't know that there's a reason to think that that's going to change anytime soon. Certainly, I hope that restrictions get to a point where they start to ease, but people's desire to participate from the public standpoint, being able to do it off-site, super, super important. So what I always kind of understood, heavy on the sound part, a little bit of projection stuff, but I think it's super important that we have the capabilities of doing things from a visual standpoint as well to improve that, because obviously the technology we have pretty limited, and nobody envisioned when they put this in here, we're going to be doing meetings where some council members really can't be in the room, and just the whole challenges that go with that.
That's something that we can certainly continue that conversation with Tierney in regards to the original scope. Some of the things that we've experienced currently with that mic, and see if there's some other opportunities within that realm that we could improve the.
I think, quite honestly, because it's been a long time, if somebody just said, hey, this is what the plan is, here's some potential options you can do for some things we weren't necessarily going to address. So I think it'd be good to revisit it.
I'll make it easy. I think that we have to be able to make this room you can hear. So if Ron Volkert is sitting out in the audience or up here at the council desk, that he can hear. Not only, and I'm picking on Ron, but there are other people that they simply can't hear. I've heard a number of times people sitting in the audience, you can't hear anything. So if we can't have I guess I go back to, I mean, you go to these churches and stuff, and they have, a lot of these churches have tremendous audio. You can hear no matter where you're sitting, what pew you're in the church, you can hear. You can't hear in this building, in this room. There's got to be a way to figure that out.
The original scope of this project would be to address the sound aspects of it. So it does include some additional amplification units. It includes the balancing of that, so that we hopefully get a more well-rounded sound and not so spotty in certain areas. It also helps to improve the visual aspects within here. So right now, the setup is a little bit cumbersome. Being able to have some different switching gear back where Kyle's located at would hopefully ease that as well. So that as we as staff are presenting, or if another individual is coming in to present, it's kind of just a one touch or two clicks process. And then there's also some equipment that will improve the access when we upload that into our YouTube or on the cable access as well. There are some components that, as we discussed this initial scope, that Tierney does feel confident that they'll be able to address that sound quality issue. But there may need to be, if that doesn't help it, some deadening, some sound panels that would help absorb some of that sound into the future. But we felt strongly just taking the first step to address the sound and see if that would just address all of the concerns, as opposed to kind of putting more things into it that may or may not help the root issue as well.
And what about accommodations for people who have trouble hearing? Is there headsets that are available or could be made available as part of this?
That has not been discussed yet. That's something that we could get an option on and see what that cost would be and bring that back to the council.
What have we budgeted so far? Is it like 50,000?
We had 40,000 budgeted. So some of those projects we had only moved forward on the council chambers at this point in time. And that's roughly 23,000, I believe.
I think that's right.
All right, okay. I'm going from my memory on that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I agree. I think the whole thing should be looked at. I think it's the future. I mean, visually, everything, it should be looked at, what we're gonna have to do 10 years from now or next year. I know there's a lot of issues that people bring up to a lot of the council members as far as, and the video and the audio is not good. So something we gotta look at. And if it takes, more money to make it better, we've got to do that.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Thanks for the update. 7.9 is the police department security. Chief.
Mayor and council, thank you. As you're aware, the police department's currently housed in an old bank processing facility that had some security measures in place when we moved in there. I don't know exactly how old any of that stuff is, but it's beyond its useful life, and we're having some issues with it and keeping it up to date. So Mark Evans, our building maintenance, did go out and get some bids and some quotes, and had a couple different security companies come down there and take a look at what the needs would be. Obviously, the full details of the security would have to remain confidential. However, they did provide us 3 different bids. The first bid was for the audio and video capabilities for inside and outside into the public spaces. That would, suit a number of needs. One, it would provide the security for the building. It would also provide our administration up front to be able to view outside which squad cars are currently at the facility and available, or whether they're out in the community for a lot of our phone call complaints, to expedite getting officers to where they need to be. The other part is there's been some requests for a safe place to do like child custody exchanges that would potentially be, have at least some video to help with, some of these volatile family situations. And then as you see with like Craigslist scams and Craigslist theft, a safe place that would be video recorded within our facility, that wouldn't necessarily require police contact, but would provide us evidence if something went poorly. The other area is an intercom system for our administrative assistants. Right now, they have to walk up to the window to deal with people that are coming in for walk-up service. We have somewhat of a secure lobby. However, there's been a number of incidents of late where people have come in, one person actually with a firearm. So our front office staff has been concerned of late, especially with the civil unrest and public scrutiny of law enforcement, to provide them a little safer working environment. So we did also look at having additional intercom system video. And the other issue we're having right now with COVID-19, we've got our admin assistants separated in the separate offices, so they can't actually see who's coming into the lobby right now. So, I think those 2 things would be a step in the right direction. The third area was the key fob system. We decided that maybe wasn't the best use of funds at this point, and that these 2, with a total cost of approximately $22,853, would provide us the security upgrades and safety that we're looking for within the police department. Rayanne, I don't know if you wanted to touch on the financial part of that, or?
I can, yes. So for that particular upgrade, there's a couple of options. This could be just included as part of the capital replacement levy. We did factor that in our budget this evening. Also, it could be appropriated out of operating funds for 2020 as well. At this juncture, I would just recommend that it comes out of the capital replacement levy as part of the surplus that would roll forward from 2020.
Chief, not asking you to disclose any sensitive security information relative to the bid, but when you're talking about whether it's Craigslist or what have you, kind of a exchange area, you talk about custodial situations with children between individuals who are no longer together. Do you envision, is lighting sufficient? If somebody said it's January and we're gonna meet at the lot, and I don't know if you've really kind of got that into where exactly would that take place? I think it's something that's needed, but what you're describing here sounds to me like in the parking lot of the police station, people could be meeting to do this stuff. And do you have adequate lighting to, so your video cameras do what they do? And is there gonna be any ability, if you can comment on this, to record audio that's outside?
At this time, there won't be audio capabilities on the outside of the building. It would just be security type video in the public spaces outside. You know, the lighting, we have a couple of street lights, if you will, within the parking lot. You know, most of the custody exchanges and things like that, you know, some of them can, especially in the winter months, happen in the evening hours. I guess without seeing the actual video footage, I don't have an actual or a real valid comment. You know, right now we encourage people like to use, you know, Walmart parking lot and stuff like that, where it's well lit in the evening, to kind of get that same effect. But there's some comfort, I think, for people doing those things in a police department parking lot where they know that help is, you know, we don't need to know every time they're doing it, but they know help is very close.
And again, I think it's a worthy idea. Is there room in the parking lot right now?
Yes.
Did you get more than one bid on this, or this is just what?
Mark Evans did a lot of the research, so I can't.
Okay.
But this is kind of what, you know, met our needs for within the building and the outside.
Thanks.
I can answer that, Craig, too. I know Mark had looked at a couple of other providers as well. With our previous relationship with this, that they were comparable on pricing. But most of our componentry is through this company as well.
Oh,
So there's
good.
some commonality with other
Good.
aspects of
I didn't know
so.
that.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we move forward with the Floyd security bid for the audio video portion in the intercom system not to exceed 22,853.60.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to move forward with this bid of the 22,000, not to exceed whatever the number you just said.
22,853.
22,850. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
yes,
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 710 is the drug detective vehicle replacement.
Mayor and council, back in 2016, with the council approval, we started a dedicated drug detective position. At the time that we implemented the drug detective position, kind of the best course of action was to utilize some kind of indiscreet, non-law enforcement type vehicles for that type of work. We originally talked about a schedule of replacement to be kind of a short window, 18 to 24 months, due to the nature of that type of work. We've currently had that vehicle for over 4 years. Back in 2017, it was struck with the 2017 hailstorm and suffered significant hail damage. However, at that time, that vehicle, along with a number of other police department vehicles, were damaged due to the miles and things. We did have some of the newer vehicles cosmetically repaired for visual effect. However, this was not one of them. There was some proceeds left over. And currently there's a balance of approximately $33,297 in insurance proceeds available. We're looking to, again, replace that with a used vehicle off of one of the lots from a local dealership. We do not have a vehicle in mind and have not even started really looking for one. This is just to kind of get the ball rolling. We would like to replace that yet this year with a value not to exceed $25,000 on the vehicle. And then there would also be an additional cost to change over the current lighting equipment, radio, siren, and things like that, utilizing EATI out of Minnesota. Depending on what type of vehicle we get, we may have to get some additional lighting. The cost for the changeover is $2,500. Like I said, we don't know what the final cost of the changeover will be until we know what kind of vehicle we have, but we wouldn't expect that to exceed $4,000.
Chief, do you envision that you're going to put out a bid request saying this is what my budget is? We're looking for basically the best, what you would consider to be the best use and best value. I mean, you intend to basically bid for this, correct?
Yes. What we did for the original one is we put out a bid to the local dealerships, put some parameters on it. You know, that we wanted a used vehicle, something that would, you know, blend, if you will, was nondescript. You know, a bright yellow Charger comes to mind. We'd take that. But you know what I'm saying is it's something that just doesn't stick out. You know, we've got a couple of.
Where yellow Charger wouldn't stick out at all.
I was just throwing it out there, you know. Maybe that could be the Chiefs view. So, you know, that's what our plan is, to put that out with kind of that cap on it, and see what kind of bids we get. And we'd kind of like to probably stay away from a smaller sedan type vehicle and potentially do, you know, either a small or like a used pickup truck, or, you know, something a little bit different than what we have now. So it's, you know, SUV or something along those lines that can carry some equipment as well.
You got the money you're looking to spend up to $29,000.
Correct. And that would come from the insurance proceeds that from that
Mr. Mayor,
previous hail damage.
I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the police department's desire to replace that drug detective vehicle in an amount not to exceed $25,000 for the vehicle and $4,000 for necessary lighting and equipment, and specifically if it's done on a bid basis to stretch those dollars as far as you can.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to spend up to $29,000, money they already have. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
yes,
Alderman Kraft,
yes,
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
And that motion passes. And item 7.11 is the squad replacement to main duties.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, in 2020, the police department was slated to replace 2 main duty patrol vehicles and a detective car. With the kind of unprecedented times of 2020, we were asked if we could push that off. We did. And, you know, right now, as we're going into late last week, our 2 main duty squads had one over 110,000 miles and one over 105,000 miles respectively. These squads are basically being driven 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're beyond their warranties, going into winter. So my ask tonight is that we open up a process to replace those 2 main duty squads. As you're aware from previous squad replacement protocols, this can take up to months to get. So I'm asking to just get that process rolling to see what kind of bids we get in, what kind of equipment can transfer from one squad to the next. And then, clearly we wouldn't take delivery of these vehicles until after January 1st into next year's budget cycle. But as you're aware, it can take up to, once we order the squads, it can take up to, 3-4 months or even longer to get those squads in. And I fear that they're going to start costing us more money in the maintenance category than it is to replace them. So I think the sooner we can get that ball rolling, the better.
Craig, is this coming out of the 2021 or the 2020 budget?
2021. So we would not take delivery till after the first of the year.
You just want to get them ordered.
Yes, we want to get the process going and then order them as soon as possible.
So
They're estimated at
I
about
guess-
42,000 each.
So I guess my question would be, since we don't have an approved budget yet for 2021, if it makes sense to make this approval now, or if it makes sense to wait until the budget's actually approved.
Well, I think the problem is, Carrie, that, and I will say from personal experience, knowing how long this process can take. And traditionally, actually, the conversation was probably held in earnest in November, but we found that it got to be, sometimes it was springtime before these cars showed up. So, I think what the chief's saying is that time is of the essence here to get this started, because I will say, you're probably talking about 3.5 months as a minimum time. And it definitely could exceed 4 months before these cars show up and are outfitted and ready to go. So I appreciate what your concern is, but if we have a commitment to doing this, we definitely should get started now.
Yes. Typically, we replace.
No,
the cars
I
a year.
agree. Sorry, I agree.
go ahead.
I just think it's difficult to make a decision. I mean, we don't have any dollars assigned to what this will cost us. At least I don't see that included in the memo. Without knowing what the budget's going to look like for next year, even a framework for what it's going to look like. I don't know that I feel comfortable approving
Greg,
an expense this large.
Carrie, just for the record, we actually aren't approving an expense. We're just giving the police department the authority to bid. So the bids aren't accepted until the council approves them. I guess I understand your question. And so this just
Okay.
gives the department the ability to go out and bid. Whatever the timing is, if it's a month from now, or if it's in a couple weeks, or whatever it is, that the chief would come back and say, well, here's the bids I got, and then the council makes a decision at that point. And the council's decision at that time could be to reject all the bids and not spend the money, although I don't anticipate that's going to be the case. But your point's a valid one. So we aren't committing to spending any money, just allowing them to bid.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other discussion?
And I think, Mayor, you pointed out that normally we do 2 squad cars a year, and this year we didn't do any. So
Yeah.
we're a little behind on that capital replacement in that category. So
Yep, it's just what we have found in years past is if you continue to do this, you just start having lots of problems with cars breaking down, and nothing more embarrassing than seeing a squad car broken down alongside the road. Call the roll.
I don't have a motion or a second yet.
We had a
I'm
motion.
sorry,
from Mike.
I thought I made a motion to go ahead
Oh.
and proceed with the bidding.
Yeah, so Mike.
Sorry about that.
and Kittle made the second.
All right, Alderman Kittle,
yeah,
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Right, and that motion passes. And item 7.12 is the city council statement regarding proposed St. Croix County Communicable Disease Ordinance. Now, Mike is the one who brought it to my attention. If you want to start off, Mike, or you want me to jump in?
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I know that I've had conversations with some members of the council, just making them aware of what the county is considering. We have a copy in the packet of this proposed amendment, or excuse me, ordinance as such. And I think based on what I've heard from not just the town hall meeting that the county board held last Wednesday, but then even Tuesday night during their actual normal board meeting, there was a lot of public comment relative to concerns with the ordinance. Quite honestly, as I understand it, there was a percentage of people who supported it the way it is. I think the overwhelming voiced opinion was not in favor. The concern that I have is, the city can adopt or appoint a health officer, and that really, as you read this ordinance, if it's adopted the way they have it here, that means the city could kind of establish its own rules.
We have a health officer.
I'm not here today to say that the coronavirus is not to be concerned about, that wearing a mask is bad, or even a requirement to wear a mask is bad. That's not my opinion at all. As you read this proposed ordinance, it's got an Orwellian flavor to it, where they're suggesting that a health officer would be deputized, if I can use that term, or given the authority to find people, to enter into buildings. It doesn't exclude homes. If they're in the work of trying to fight the pandemic, I'm going to say it the way they say it. And it's my understanding that if it was the council's view to say, hey, we don't support this, that's probably not very instructive. And so really to communicate as a body back to the county, what we'd like to see done. And there's nothing and there's everything. And in some ways, this kind of represents more in the everything spectrum. And I don't think nothing is the answer. But is there a guideline that we could propose that we really feel makes sense for folks addressing the concerns that the coronavirus presents? Not just saying, oh, it's nothing, just do what you want, whatever. So with that in mind, that's why I'm glad that we're talking about this tonight.
Reading through the ordinance, I guess some of the biggest concerns, they're talking about the schools. That's kind of, they're going to inspect the schools. I would think a health officer has far more important things to be doing than walking up and down the halls of a school. But I think the biggest trigger is the enter any building with the special inspection warrant, and has the state statute to inspect the same and remove therefrom any person. So you have, I think that's probably the biggest thing that people, is that fear factor. All of a sudden, here is a non-peace officer entering your house and is going to remove you simply because you have a communicable disease. I think that's, as you're saying, Orwellian. I think that's scary. Obviously, I think we need to do something about, obviously, the job of the health officer is to help alleviate communicable diseases, but to kind of give that blanket authority that we're going to enter into your residence or your place of work or worship and arrest you because you're sick scares me. I don't know how anybody else.
This is just drastic overreach. You can't allow a health officer to go into any home or business for that matter and take out people that they may believe to be sick, whether they are or not, who knows? But there's a way around it, but all we can do is tell the county board, we disagree with this. We don't think you should enact this ordinance. And they're going to do what they want to do anyway.
Well, if an Richmond citizen feels that way, they should just go to the county board and go to the county board meetings and express those feelings.
Well, I think about 250 of them did,
Yeah, that's fine. That's what it's all about.
but I don't think that's gonna change their path.
Well, do you think a letter from us would change their path?
Well, I
Okay,
think,
so-
I would hope that it does with the people who are elected to represent this area. And I think it does show something different, that there is a legislative body within the confines of the county that feels differently than they do. And I do think it's important because in the end, if we have our own health officer, and I guess Mayor, you said we do have one, but if we, then we kind of have our own rules. And the reality is, we don't have any rules right now. There aren't any, right? If our local health officers, we haven't told them what to do.
That's a problem.
And it is to me, there are some people get heartburn over this. You can go into, I would say, the vast majority of eating establishments in this area, and I think folks are doing a great job of trying to social distance, wear masks, those types of things. I don't know that you could say that for everyone.
You couldn't.
And in the end, some people will say, well, this is a private deal. You don't want to get the disease, stay home. That's ridiculous. I don't smoke. I don't want lung cancer. Does that mean that I have to stay in my house because maybe somebody's walking around smoking? No, there's got to be some balance there for folks. And I think that there is some things that are prudent to put forth. And no, I don't know what all of them are, but I don't think zero enforcement is the right thing. And I don't know if enforcement, I even hesitate to use the word. But when you read this and it talks about a person having the ability to find, okay, you're not wearing a mask and you're in a place you're supposed to wear a mask. That could be up to a $500 fine. Oh, you didn't wear one tomorrow, or you didn't wear one yesterday? That's another $500 fine. It just could be way over in the way it is. And some folks from the county that I've had conversation with have said, yeah, we think that's a little bit broad. That might be generous to say that's what's wrong with it. So I just think that there's nothing wrong with city government expressing their opinion that the residents of our community have as much safety as we can reasonably put forth without saying, you do that, we're putting you in the town stocks, and that's what it's going to be.
I don't anticipate that happening. I just don't. Maybe I'm naive, but I just don't anticipate that happening without prior warning, without some kind of education to whoever's the person that's going to be broke in on. Maybe I'm naive, but I just don't see that as something that it's going to come to. I think what the overall reaching thing was this need for medical people to make choices for the people. I don't think it's a matter of enforcement. It sounds like, and when I've read, it sounds, I don't know if I'd use the term Orwellian, but it sounds a little overboard. I just don't anticipate that happening. I think the people need to be educated better than they are. And if they're not educated by now as they should be, that's a problem. But I don't know. I don't know where it's our business as a council to get involved in the county stuff. If Mike, you have a problem with it, then you should go to the county and express your views down there.
Greg, I would only say that it does become the council's business because the county is proposing an ordinance that would extend into the city of New Richmond's jurisdiction. So effectively what they're saying, proposed legislation is saying, is that this would extend to cities, villages, and towns that don't have a local health department.
But we do.
Well, do we actually have a health department as defined by the ordinance?
I was going to ask that question. We
Yeah,
have a health
that's something we've
officer.
No.
known
don't
for
have a
quite a
health
while.
I think we just have a health officer.
Yeah, and that's
not the jurisdiction that would keep.
well, not currently by this ordinance. I find this ordinance not to be particularly well drafted. I understand that the concept of allowing the public health department to inspect public buildings, but there's a provision in here And I think the mayor had referenced it about, see, it's under powers.
Yeah.
Do they need a warrant?
Yeah,
B2.
under 41.06 B2, it says to enter any building. Well, with an inspection warrant. Well, is it a public building or is it a private building?
And what constitutes an inspection warrant? Who do you get that from? Is it that's their own?
Well,
their
there's
own
a
thinking?
there's a particular statute, but I think where this becomes of interest to New Richmond is that I do think this ordinance particularly subjects the residents of the city of New Richmond, if it's adopted, to the controls included within this ordinance. And to the extent that it's the will of the council to say, we don't want this in the city, then it's perfectly valid for the council to issue an expression of opposition to say, we're not in agreement. We'd prefer not to see this type of regulation in the city. You know, effectively, we manage our own circumstances and have taken our own actions. You know, and frankly, the actions that you've taken with respect to COVID throughout the process, in some cases have lined up with other communities, and in other cases have taken different approaches. But you've taken a very localized approach, which is what the council has done and staff has supported, and I think it's worked well to the benefit of the residents. So if in fact the council doesn't want to see this become the legislation of the county and the regulatory framework applying to the city, then it would be appropriate for the council to go on record in opposition to this proposed legislation.
So what you're saying is this legislation would supersede a health officer
A local.
unless we have a health department in the city.
Well, no, it does refer to local health officer. It does say that.
So if we have a local health officer,
This says.
this supersedes
Go to,
whoever that might be and whatever our rules are in the city?
it's under, Nick, it's under,
So 4104 talks about does not extend to cities, villages, and towns that have local health departments.
but
Departments.
go down to 4105.
Yep, that
Go to
talks about the role of a
4105
health
B-
officer.
B
But if we don't have a health department,
department.
does their health officer supersede ours? Because we
I
don't have a
believe-
department.
I believe they do.
Because then there is an issue. Then there is a problem.
Correct. Yeah, and I, you know, to the extent that COVID cases are reported right now in communities that don't have their own public health department, everything runs back through the county's
Right.
health department. So I believe just a plain reading of this ordinance would indicate that this would put the city of New Richmond within the jurisdiction of this ordinance.
Okay.
Again, it's why I don't think this ordinance is drafted particularly well, because there's some ambiguity in terms of jurisdiction and also in terms of what the county's health official has the right to do versus what the city's health official has the right to do. But this would seem to give the county jurisdiction in the city of New Richmond because the city doesn't have its own local health department.
See, when the state Supreme Court kicked this back to everyone, right at the beginning of this, I was under the understanding that if we had a health officer, that we kind of had our own situation in the city. But obviously that it might not be true now, or what?
I don't believe that's correct. When
Because we talked about this when this first came back to us.
We did, but I believe that when the state Supreme Court struck down the stay-at-home order, then it became a localized issue with both cities and counties having their own authority based on who has a public health department. Cities like Madison and Milwaukee have their own public health departments, which is why they're able to make their own regulations. But other communities that don't, where the county health department is the controlling authority because there is no other public health department, that's where you see those counties issuing county-wide regulations, county-wide orders. And you're seeing that throughout the state at this point. So I think we fall under the jurisdiction of this particular proposed legislation if it is enacted by the St. Croix County Board.
And then keep in mind that the governor issued last week, it's, all I know it as is order number 3 for roughly a month that talks about the maximum number of people that are allowed inside of a structure. And I'm going to just give a shout out to Beth for her help in getting information out to businesses, so that you could actually define what you're building, because most businesses don't have that placard on them that say maximum occupancy of this is based on building codes. And she got the information together so that businesses can do the calculation. So it's very helpful. But again, it gets back to this idea that the business that I'm employed at, where we're trying to do the responsible thing. And if somebody walked in, a bureaucratic individual walked in and said, wow. And we can all say, hey, that's not going to happen. But the point is, they could say, well, da 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 da, boom, here's a fine. And I just use that as an example. That's not the worst of it. I think it's been discussed, this idea of going into any home. And I got to tell you, Nick, it makes me, just gives a warmness in my heart to hear an attorney criticize another attorney's work. But it's, I do think tonight, I don't know if it's enough to say we don't support the county's measure as it's proposed. And, we look forward to being involved in discussion to draft something that's workable and has some sense of, we're trying to protect the public safety without being over the top. Here you go. So I don't know what people's thoughts are about that.
I like the approach of what Nick was talking about. It's kind of ambiguous. I don't know if you have, I don't want you to spend tons of time on this, Nick, but if you had a response of, the lawyerly, this is not a very well-written ordinance.
Yeah.
What do you do with communities that have a health officer but don't have a health department? Does this supersede? I mean, there's a lot of questions in there.
Well, and I think the other piece of this, you mentioned the governor's emergency order. I mean, on the one hand, you have the governor who has issued an emergency order. On the other hand, you have the Tavern League, which is taking the position that the governor's emergency order is not enforceable because he didn't follow the legislative rules procedure as outlined by the statute. At the same time, you just had a decision in St. Croix County Court yesterday by Judge Waterman upholding the governor's mask requirement when many argue that wasn't constitutional because it didn't comply with the statutes, the emergency public emergency statutes.
Was that the Polk County case?
That was the Polk County case that was heard by Judge Waterman because the Polk County judges recused themselves.
This judge ruled in favor of the state.
He ruled in favor of the state and the mask ordinance, and has effectively said that the legislature can meet and overturn that order if in fact it so desires. And so you have all these conflicting positions and statements. And I do think to the mayor's point that I think we could probably create a resolution in fairly short order. I don't know when the next hearing is on this particular ordinance, but to say that the city council of the city of New Richmond is concerned about, the following 5 or 6 points regarding the ambiguity in the actual application to the residents of the city of New Richmond, without saying that we support an ordinance or we don't support an ordinance. The only thing we have to evaluate is what we have before us right now. And the fact of the matter is what we have before us is somewhat problematic in its jurisdiction, in its application, and how in fact it would work particularly in this city.
I support the county's intent. It's just the implementation of how they're going to go about it is what I have a problem with. I think we all do.
I agree. I mean, like as Mike had pointed out, there needs something to be done, but to basically jump on the bandwagon of storming your house and because they fear that you're sick, is overkill.
It's overkill.
Bad law. I mean, and once it's on the books, it's not going to come off the books. And that comes down to who's going to be the health officer. How hard do they want to go after that?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in that position.
Who's going to be the what?
The health officer that's making the decisions of how hard they're going to enforce this ordinance.
What he's saying is the health officer down the road is, you have this authority now.
I agree. I was just thinking.
What's the next pandemic that people are going to be worried about, or health scare or something? It's just bad law. I'd say it this way, Kirk. I think there's a better approach.
this isn't the right approach. I think there's a better approach. And I'm not suggesting nothing, but I think there's a better approach than this.
So we can communicate to the county board that information with a letter?
Yeah, so this is at the committee level right now. So I participated virtually last week in the Health and Human Services Board meeting. They meet again next week, I believe, on the 21st. If they recommend moving forward with it, it would then go to the full county board. So there is some time, if we'd like to draft something that we bring back to this group, or if you feel comfortable just based on the discussion, having Nick draft something, I think it would go a longer ways rather than just saying the city council is opposed to it, but to give some constructive feedback, or in this case, some constructive criticism of the ordinance. I think that would go a longer ways with the full county board.
Well, I support the city attorney drafting a rebuttal, if you will. Advisory, whatever you want to call it, on behalf of the city prior to that meeting. And so the issue is whether or not everybody else is comfortable empowering Nick to do that, and that he send that out to folks so they can look at it, and however that could function.
I think he's heard everybody's concerns and
Do we need a motion?
Back to the council
Do
before
we
we
need a motion to
put
that?
our name on it?
that's the question.
But look, can I ask you, Mayor, do we need a motion? A motion?
It's just it's a question of what you want to do. What I would propose to do is draft a letter that I can circulate before I send it so that everybody can see it. You can submit comments back to me. The plan would be to get it out within the next week or before the next meeting anyway. That indicates that the city council has reviewed and discussed the ordinance, that it has, that while it believes that the county's intentions are well-meaning, that there are a number of issues that are concerning to the city. And I just lay 4 or 5 of the key issues out to give them some sense of what our concerns are.
That sounds good. I don't know, do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I think Carrie had a question.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say that I would be in support of Nick drafting some kind of rebuttal, as long as we have the ability to review it beforehand. And it sounds like that's the plan. So yeah, I'm very, very hesitant to, a lot of people have reached out and said, this is overreach. This is ridiculous. Please don't support this. It's bad. I don't know. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Carrie, do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Sure. So
A motion is in order. Not that we legally would have to. I mean, we could do this on consensus, but it just puts it on the record that, so the county can see that we are concerned about this, and, they concerned enough that we took a vote on it.
yeah, so I would put forth a motion that we allow Attorney Nick Vivian to draft a letter in response to the St. Croix County ordinance disputing, or I guess not disputing, but
Oh.
I hear someone in the background talking.
Oh, sorry. Somebody was asking a question, Carrie, because
That's being
I'm
rude. I'm sorry.
gonna second your motion, Carrie.
Okay, you know what I was trying to say.
I do.
All right.
Question is, does Michelle?
Yes, I got it.
All right, so there's a motion and a second of Nick draft up some language for the county meeting next week. Nick is going to take your feedback. So if you have feedback, some specific concerns, get it to Nick ASAP. So he can incorporate that in his letter. He will circulate the letter to the council. And once there's appropriate feedback given, then we'll send that on to the county.
I'll circulate the letter tomorrow afternoon. So if anybody has comments, back to me within a day or so that we can finalize the letter and get it off to the county before their next meeting.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Right, and that motion passes. Item 8 is communications miscellaneous. Camps is doing a fundraiser for their burgers. So go down and support the community, buy a burger.
Yep, it supports the canine fund, so appreciate any support.
And Mr. Mayor, I asked, but is there a grand opening for 45th Parallel coming up? I thought I got a quarantine message. I can't even open it. But I thought that's what it was.
Not that I know of. They've had a few smaller private events. Typically in the fall, they would have done they'd kind of do an outdoor music event there. They did not hold that this year just with COVID. I haven't heard of any dates, but that's something that if Beth Thompson hears of some type of ribbon cutting or something, she can send to the group.
Can you come up here for a second? I just want you to look at this.
We have to go to closed session.
Communications and miscellaneous.
Oh,
Couldn't take too long.
So I'm assuming it went to everybody in the council. But, okay.
Yeah,
Try
I
to
got
get
it.
more.
I couldn't open it either.
Yeah, if we
There's
find
two
something
ways
out,
to
we'll
establish
let
an
everybody know.
account in the past.
put it on the website.
Any other communications?
I would be remiss if I did not remind everyone that October 20th is early in-person voting open here at the Civic Center from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. October 20th through 30th, including Sunday, the 25th.
I have a question for Michelle.
Yeah.
Can you count what votes you have in now
No,
and until election day?
correct. I can't count an absentee ballot till the polls open on November 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
So
Yep.
November 3rd, if there's a break, that's when the staff, poll workers start opening up and staff.
Hey, Mayor,
Alright.
this is Beth Thompson. Can I add something real quick to Mike Montello's question about 45th Parallel? I received an email on Friday afternoon about their soft opening, which they held on Saturday, October 10th from 5 to 8. I think that might be what he's talking about.
Okay.
It was great
Hey,
too.
Beth, yeah, Beth, thanks for the past tense.
It was great too.
That I just got it. I did not forward it on because I didn't look at it until Monday morning. So it was late Friday afternoon.
Tell Mike, remember?
What's that?
Yes.
Never mind.
All right. Closed session per state statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation. Evaluation, discussion of interim city administrator, utility manager, employment agreement. Is there a motion to go to closed session?
I would make the motion to go into closed session.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
And do we have a separate line for closed session, or is it the same line? We hope everybody.
I did send out a second.
Yep, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and we'll make sure that Ron is back on before we go open back up.
I'm here.
We'll be here.
Come on, Thomas.
What you got, sir?
I've heard about it.
That's what I hear.
One out of 7 people is in favor of it. Well, you have a number of things anyway. Or mask order. You have a county sheriff who won't enforce the mask order. You have, and he says, it's not criminal, it's public health. Call the public health department. You have a public health department that is completely overwhelmed because vast majority of what they're doing is working with the schools right now. So they don't have the authority or the bandwidth to do anything. You have a district attorney who says,
first of all, he's retiring, so he's not motivated to get involved. And so, you know, he'd say, well, you know, if we can get the sheriff on board, then I'm happy to play ball, knowing full well that you're going to get the sheriff on board. So, you know, you have all these things.